Anne and Betsy, Part 1, The Canvas of Deception. Chapter 1, First Strokes. The community centre smelled like turpentine and broken dreams. Anne Rodriguez pressed her back against the cold metal chair, studying the pristine blonde sitting beside her, who looked as out of place as a Rolex in a pawn shop. The woman, Betsy, according to the name tag she'd reluctantly stuck to her designer sweater, stared at her blank canvas like it might bite her. "You gonna paint something or just have a staring contest with it all day?" Anne asked, dipping her brush into crimson paint with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. Betsy's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her unused brush. "I don't know what to paint. What if it's wrong?" Anne snorted, dragging bold, chaotic strokes across her canvas. "Wrong? Honey, it's your canvas. Unless you're planning to paint a swastika or something equally stupid, there's no wrong here." The blonde watched Anne's movements with a fascination that made Anne's skin crawl. She'd seen that look before, the way people observed her like she was an exotic animal at the zoo. Look at the poor girl, so carefree, so authentic, as if poverty was some kind of artistic accessory. How do you just do that? Without thinking. Betsy's voice held a longing that surprised Anne. "'Cause I got nothing to lose," Anne replied, then studied Betsy's designer clothes, her perfect posture, the way she held herself like she was afraid of taking up too much space. "You look like you got everything to lose." Something flickered in Betsy's eyes, recognition, maybe, or fear. She picked up her brush with the careful precision of someone performing surgery. Chapter 2, The Weight of Expectations. Anne's studio apartment was a study in organized chaos. Every inch served a purpose, from the Murphy bed that doubled as her easel support to the kitchen table that held her laptop, art supplies, and tonight's dinner, ramen noodles again. She counted the crumpled bills scattered across the small surface, $43.67. Rent was due in 5 days. Her phone buzzed with notifications from 3 different dating apps. She scrolled through them mechanically. Marcus, 34, investment banker. Trevor, 28, tech startup owner. David, 31, real estate developer. All of them successful, all of them lonely enough to swipe right on a girl whose photos carefully hid the holes in her jeans. People think being poor means you're free, she thought, staring at Marcus's message about dinner at some restaurant she'd never be able to afford on her own. Free from expectations, free from judgment. Truth is, you're trapped by everyone else's expectations of what poor should look like. Her foster mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Baby, men got wallets and you got beauty." Do the math. Mathematics had never been Anne's strength, but survival. That was a subject she'd mastered before she could legally drive. She typed back to Marcus, "Sounds amazing. Can't wait to see you." The words tasted like ashes, but they paid for groceries. Chapter 3, Golden Cages. 15 miles across town, Betsy Whitmore sat in her pristine kitchen, untouched sushi growing warm on the marble countertop. The apartment was featured in Architectural Digest 2 years ago. All clean lines, muted colors, and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. It was beautiful, sterile, and suffocatingly empty. Her phone lay face down beside her, 3 missed calls from her mother glowing on the screen. Betsy knew what they were about, the charity gala next week, the young men her mother had strategically seated at their table, the subtle pressure to find someone suitable who could appreciate what the Whitmore name represented. "Money doesn't buy you freedom," she reflected, pushing a piece of salmon around with her chopsticks. "It builds golden cages. Every smile feels calculated. Every compliment sounds like a business proposal." The art class was her secret rebellion, paid for with cash so it wouldn't appear on the credit card statements her mother monitored for security purposes. Betsy had signed up hoping to find something, anything, that belonged to her alone. Instead, she'd found Anne, who painted like she was exorcising demons, who spoke without measuring every word for potential consequences. Anne was dangerous in a way Betsy had never encountered. Not because she wanted something, everyone wanted something, but because she seemed genuinely indifferent to what Betsy could offer. It was intoxicating and terrifying. Her therapist's voice nagged at her. "You have trust issues, Elizabeth. You need to learn to open up." Betsy called it pattern recognition. In her world, people were investments, relationships were portfolios, and love was a hostile takeover waiting to happen. Chapter 4: Dinner and Deception. The restaurant Marcus chose screamed money: dim lighting, servers who moved like ghosts, and wine that cost more than Anne's monthly utilities. She played her part perfectly, impressed but not too impressed, grateful but not desperate, interested but not easy. Marcus was handsome in that bland, expensive way that came from good genetics and better dental work. He talked about his work, his apartment in Manhattan, his vacation home in the Hamptons. Anne nodded and smiled, mentally calculating how many groceries his watch could buy. "You're different from other women I've dated," he said, cutting into his steak. "More authentic." Authentic. The word made her want to laugh or scream. If he only knew how carefully she'd crafted this version of herself, the struggling artist with just enough vulnerability to seem real, just enough independence to seem challenging. "What do you mean?" she asked, taking a sip of wine that probably cost more than her art supplies. "You're not just after what I can give you. You actually care about your art, your dreams. It's refreshing." Anne's smile felt like it might crack her face. "That's sweet of you to say." But as Marcus signaled for the check, something cold settled in her stomach. She caught her reflection in the restaurant's window, perfectly made up, playing a role she'd perfected over years of necessity. Was this who she really was? Or had the performance become so complete that she'd lost track of where the act ended and Anne began? Chapter 5: Family Secrets. The Whitmore family dinner was a masterclass in civilized dysfunction. Betsy's father, James, sat at the head of the mahogany table, his hands trembling slightly as he cut his lamb. His face had the pale, hollow look of someone fighting battles no one else could see. Her mother, Patricia, maintained perfect posture and perfectly applied makeup, but kept checking her phone with the frequency of someone expecting important news. "How's the art class, sweetheart?" James asked, his voice carrying the careful enthusiasm of someone trying to connect through a fog of his own making. "It's good. I made a friend." Patricia's head snapped up from her phone. "What's her background?" "Family." "Why does that matter?" "Everything matters when you have what we have, Elizabeth." Patricia's voice carried the weight of experience. "People see opportunity in our family." James reached for his water glass, and Betsy noticed how his hands shook. The private clinics, the business trips that were really rehab stays, the way he sometimes looked at her like he was trying to remember who she was. Pieces of a puzzle she'd been avoiding suddenly clicked into place. "Your mother's right," he said quietly. People see opportunity in our family. Sometimes they see it in ways that can hurt you." Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and couldn't quite suppress a smile before catching herself. "I have to step out. Prayer group meeting." She left quickly, her heels clicking against the marble floor with purpose. James stared after her, and in his eyes, Betsy saw a pain so deep it made her chest tight. "Dad," she started, but he was already pushing back from the table. I should check on some work emails, he mumbled, leaving Betsy alone with the echo of secrets no one was brave enough to speak aloud. Chapter 6. Midnight Confessions. Anne stared at the photograph she kept hidden in her nightstand drawer, a woman with her eyes and her stubborn chin, wearing a dress that had seen better days and a smile that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. She had no memories of this woman, only stories told in whispers by social workers and foster parents who thought she wasn't listening. They said she was a working girl. They said she left you because she couldn't provide. The words had shaped Anne's understanding of love and survival, twisted them into something transactional. Her phone buzzed with a text from Trevor asking if she wanted to grab brunch tomorrow. Another performance, another careful dance around what she needed versus what she could give. Maybe she was protecting me, Anne thought, tracing the edges of the photograph. Maybe leaving was the most loving thing she could do. But it had taught her that love and money got tangled up in ways that made both feel dirty. Every relationship became a calculation, every connection a potential solution to her next financial crisis. She set the photo back in the drawer and reached for her phone to respond to Trevor, then stopped. For the first time in years, she found herself thinking about someone without considering what they could do for her. Betsy's face flickered through her mind, not the perfect exterior, but the vulnerability she'd glimpsed during art class, the way she held her brush like it might shatter. What if, Anne thought, what if there was someone who saw past the performance? The thought was dangerous. Hope always was. Chapter 7. The Call. 2 weeks into their friendship, Betsy called Anne at 11 p.m., her voice tight with something that might have been panic. "Can you meet me?" she asked without preamble. "I know it's late, but I need to talk to someone who isn't." She trailed off. "Where?" Anne asked, already reaching for her jacket. "The coffee shop near the community center. I'm already here." Anne found her sitting in the corner booth, still in expensive clothes, but looking like she'd been crying. Her perfectly styled hair was mussed, and her makeup was smudged just enough to make her look human. "What happened?" Anne slid into the seat across from her. Betsy stared into her untouched coffee. "I followed my mother tonight." The words hung between them like a bomb waiting to explode. "She wasn't at prayer group, she was at a hotel, with my karate instructor." Betsy's voice was flat, emotionless. 7 years, Anne. She's been having an affair for 7 years while playing the perfect Christian wife. Anne felt something shift in her chest, not the calculated sympathy she usually performed, but genuine anger on Betsy's behalf. "I'm sorry, that's really fucked up." "The worst part is I'm not even surprised. I think I've known for a while. The late meetings, the way she lights up when he texts, the way she and my father barely look at each other anymore." Betsy finally met Anne's eyes. "My whole life has been built on lies. Perfect family, perfect reputation, perfect everything. And it's all just performance." Anne reached across the table and took Betsy's hand. It was soft, uncalloused, nothing like her own work-roughened fingers. "I know something about performance." "Do you?" Betsy's eyes searched Anne's face. "Sometimes I think you're the only real person I know." The irony was so sharp it could cut. Anne wanted to laugh, wanted to confess, wanted to tell Betsy about Marcus and Trevor and David, about the careful way she crafted every interaction to get what she needed. Instead, she squeezed Betsy's hand tighter. "We're all performing something," she said carefully. "The question is whether we're performing for survival or for control." Chapter 8. The Revelation. The next morning, Anne woke to 17 missed calls from an unknown number. When her phone rang again, she answered with a groggy, "Hello?" "Is this Anne Rodriguez?" The voice was crisp, professional. "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Patricia Whitmore, Elizabeth's mother. I think we need to talk." Anne's blood turned to ice. "About what?" "About your little friendship with my daughter, and about what it's really going to cost." The line went dead, leaving Anne staring at her phone with the sinking realization that her two worlds, the one where she was Betsy's authentic friend and the one where she performed for survival, were about to collide in ways she'd never imagined. Outside her window, the city hummed with its usual indifference, but Anne felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, and someone had just cut the rope she'd been using to climb. She thought about Betsy's tears the night before, about the genuine connection she'd felt, about the way holding her hand had felt like the first honest thing she'd done in months. And she thought about the $43.67 scattered across her kitchen table, about rent that was due in 3 days, about Marcus and Trevor and David waiting in her phone for her next performance. The photograph of her mother seemed to stare at her from the nightstand drawer, a reminder that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is the thing that breaks your heart. Anne closed her eyes and tried to imagine what came next, but all she could see was the moment when Betsy would realize that their friendship, the first real thing either of them had found, might have been just another performance after all. The phone rang again. To be continued. What secrets is Patricia Whitmore hiding beyond her affair? What does she really want from Anne? And when Betsy discovers the truth about Anne's financial desperation and calculated relationships, will their friendship survive? Or will it become another casualty in the war between authenticity and survival? Find out in Part 2, The Price of Truth.